The contents of this video include the following. The original title of the 1,000-character classic was 1,000 characters in the Book of Wang Si Qi. It is a text consisting of 1,000 non-repeating Chinese characters that primarily teaches literacy in ancient China. The 1,000-character classic contains astronomical, geographical, political, economic, social, historical, and ethical texts, without repeating a single word, in Chinese, of the entire text. The 1,000-character essay has a clear theme throughout. The chapters and sentences are in the same vein, advancing layer by layer. The language is beautiful, the words are poetic, and almost every sentence quotes the scriptures. Its contents are derived from other ancient Chinese books like the I Ching, the Huai-Nanci, the Book of Poetry, the Book of Documents, the Book of Rites, the Spring and Autumn Annals, the Analects of Confucius, the Book of Filial Piety, the Mencius, the Records of the Grand Historian, Shen Nong by Cao Jing, Huanzi, Hanfeizi, Zhuangzi, and the Book of Han. As with other ancient classics, the 1,000-character essay is characterized by Confucianism and incorporates general knowledge of nature, history and society, with a profound meaning. With its clear structure, simple and beautiful language, it can be described as a long poem in quartets. Literacy textbooks dedicated to teaching literacy appeared in China at a very early stage. Since the Qin dynasty, there have been the Kangxi chapters and the Zunli chapters. However, only Shiyu's The Rapid Achievement chapter from the Three Kingdoms era had a greater impact on later generations, while the rest had little influence. Although the Rapid Achievement chapter is a more prominent elementary school book after the Kangxi chapters, various problems arose in its circulation, and its authority was not as great as it was in the North and South dynasties. By the time of the Northern and Southern dynasties, the initiation readings that appeared during this period, such as the Tinggao and the Guyu, were of limited readability. It was in this context that the 1,000-character classic was introduced. During the Three Kingdoms period, the calligrapher Zhong Yao wrote a 1,000-character classic, but it was destroyed in the turmoil of the Western Jin dynasty. Wang Shizhi tried to rearrange the original text, but it was a failed attempt. Li Chuo wrote in Shangshu Guxi records that Emperor Wu of Liang, in an attempt to educate his nephews, ordered Minister Yin Taishi to inscribe Wang Shiji's original work into stone tablets. The emperor also asked the minister to alter some of the contents so that no words were repeated. This project was an attempt to teach the 8th king literacy. Yin Taishi did as he was told, but the 1,000 characters that he inscribed did not make any sense. Frustrated, the emperor ordered another subject, Zhou to rearrange the words into meaningful prose. Zhou was able to complete his task in one night. The 1,000-character classic was thus born. The 1,000-character classic contains 1,000 unduplicated Chinese characters. Due to the implementation of simplified Chinese characters in mainland China, there are only 990 different characters left in the simplified version. Different accounts may vary. If you have read the 1,000-character classic, you will realize that different versions contain slightly different sentences and Chinese characters. Why is it so, and which one is correct? There are political considerations to explain this discrepancy. As the 1,000-character classic was passed down through different dynasties, changes had to be made. In the ancient times, the names of the emperor were not allowed to be used in common writings or it would be the death penalty. So, modifications were made to avoid this life-threatening situation. Note, because the 1,000-character classic is so rich in content, this video will only provide the original text and a simple explanation in English. The translation is based on an article written in the Chinese Repository, Volume 4, September 1835. Unfortunately, the translator could not be identified. It appears to be well translated. There are more modern-day English translations that are available on the internet, which are not used for copyright reasons. There are also some notes about various passages that were also given. These passages will be slotted into the corresponding Chinese text as explanations. The numbers in the notes refer to the original numbering in the article. The producer has also added some notes, appropriate Chinese, etc. to further the understanding of the reader.
天地玄黄，宇宙洪荒。
The heavens are of a somber hue, the earth is yellow. The whole universe, at the creation, was one wide waste. The heavens are of a somber hue, the color of the earth is yellow. In these lines there is supposed to be an allusion to the creation, or original formation, of the heavens and the earth. The cosmogony of the Chinese, though curious, is far too obscure to be explained here. Suffice it to remark, when all things were in existence, the most refined and subtle floated upwards, and formed the heavens, the more gross and impure settled downwards and formed the earth. The former were of a somber hue, while the color of the latter was yellow.
日月盈仄，晨宿列张。
The sun reaches the meridian and declines, the moon waxes and wanes. In divisions and constellations the stars are arranged. The whole universe was, at the time above referred to, one wide waste. The heavens, says one, are round and somber, the earth is square and yellow. All the regions above, below, and on every side of the earth are called a canopy, space, having existed ever since the most remote antiquity, is expressed by chao, to contain, hence chao denotes an overspreading canopy and a containing space. Solitude, or a wide waste, means a space where no human foot ever trod. Again, the heavens and the earth have been produced by the original substratum of all things.
寒来暑往，秋收冬藏。
Heat and cold, summer and winter, alternately prevail. The autumn is for ingathering, and the winter for hoarding up. The heavens are denoted by a term which signifies firmness, earth, while one which means suppleness. Spring is called the azure heavens, in allusion both to the abundant productions and to the resuscitation of nature at that season. Summer is called the brilliant heavens, in reference to the influence it has over the interior of the human system. Autumn is called the mournful heavens, for at that season the earth appears as if it were destroyed, the core of its productions injured, and all things faded away. The winter is called the upper heavens, because then the seasons have no employment, and merely rest above and govern what is below, that is the intercourse supposed to subsist between the descending breath of heaven and the ascending breath of earth suffers a temporary suspension.
闰余成岁，律吕调阳。
The intercalary portion of time completes the year. Music harmonizes the two principles of nature. Music harmonizes the two principles of nature, or, more literally, music harmonizes the male principle with the female, that is, the superior principle with the inferior, yang with yin. The far-famed and mysterious system of the dual powers is here brought to view. It is said that the breath of yin and yang produces music, wherein are 12 degrees or notes. But we confess ourselves unable to understand the explanations given of this subject, and therefore leave it for the consideration of those who are fond of nonsense. The belief in the yin and yang system stems deeply in Chinese culture and has impacted how the Chinese viewed the world since antiquity. It is definitely not nonsense. The producer can only say that the translator was frustrated in his or her attempts at trying to decipher the text, for each line contains so much more information that meets the eye.
云腾致雨，露结为霜。
Clouds ascend and cause the fall of rain. The dews congeal and form hoarfrost.
金生丽水，玉出昆冈。
Gold is found in the river Li. The jade stone is obtained from the Quanlan Mountains. The river Li, in which gold was found, is in the province of Yunnan. It is sometimes called the Golden Sanded River, Qinsha Qing, because gold is found among the sands in its bed. Producer's note: Quanlan Mountains or Kungang is the ancient Chinese name for the Kunlun Mountains.
剑号巨阙，珠称夜光。
Of swords, the most distinguished was one named Kenken. Of pearls, the finest are those called night splendors. Earth and its productions, it will be perceived, are the subjects treated of in these and the lines immediately following them. But why swords are spoken of in the 13th line, it is not easy to conjecture. Perhaps it may be because they are made of metal. The Kukyu was one of 5 swords belonging to a king of one of the small states of China. It was ornamented with 7 stars and a representation of the dragon. The people of the neighboring countries heard of it, and offered the king 3,000 valuable horses if he would allow them to examine it, but he would not consent. Pearls were called night splendors from the following incident. A minister of state, walking abroad on a certain occasion, found a wounded snake, to which he gave medicine and saved its life. Afterwards, when he was again abroad in the evening, he saw the snake holding a brilliant pearl in its mouth, and as he approached it, the snake is said to have addressed him thus: "I am the son of His Majesty the Dragon, and while recreating myself was wounded. To you, sir, I am indebted for the preservation of my life, and have brought this pearl to recompense you for your kindness." The minister accepted the pearl and presented it to his sovereign, who placed it in his hall, where by its influence the night became as day, hence pearls received the name night splendors. Producer's note: there are many more different fables that mention the pearl that could shine as bright as day.
果真李奈，菜重芥姜。
Of fruits, the most excellent are damsons and plums. Of vegetables, the most valuable are mustard and ginger. With reference to fruits, it is said that one of the ancient kings had damsons as large as the egg of the goose, and of the most delicious flavor. But lest others should possess the same in equal perfection, the king always took care to have the stone extracted from the fruit before presenting it to any of his friends. Mustard is chiefly esteemed for its power in dispelling melancholy, and ginger, because it expands the intellect and cures loathsome diseases.
海咸和淡，林潜与翔。
Sea water is saline, and river water fresh. The scaly tribes swim, the feathered ones fly.
龙师火帝，鸟官人皇。
With the dragon masters, the fire emperor, the bird rulers, and the sovereign of men. In this paragraph, the early rulers of the world, the Chinese Empire, are brought forward as examples of all that is either good or great. During the reign of Fuxi, the first ruler to whom a human character has been given by the Chinese historians, the appearance of the dragon was considered as the most felicitous omen, and by it the rank of officers was designated. Hence Fuxi's ministers were styled Longxi, dragon masters. Sheneng, the divine husbandman, regulated official rank by fire, and hence is called the Fire Emperor. According to Chinese texts, more clarification is needed for the above explanation on the part of Xineng. There are several versions to who the three emperors of antiquity were. Xineng or Shen Nong, Hanyu Pinyin, is listed as the fire emperor. There is also reference to Sui Ren, who is given the credit for making fire. Both these emperors have the same title. In the time of Shouhou, a certain bird appeared, called the Feng Niu or phoenix, whose appearance was regarded as a happy prognostic. Hence the rank of officers was designated by the figures of birds on their garments, and they were called Niu Quan, bird rulers. Huangdi, or Qiniuan, was the inventor of the mechanical arts, by which the wealth of the people was greatly increased, and therefore he was called the sovereign of men. Figures of the dragon and of the phoenix have both continued in use to the present day, though not for the purpose of denoting the rank of office. Again, more clarification is needed. There are several versions to the identity of Huangdi or Huangdi as mentioned in the text. Xuan Yuan was his surname and he was indeed called the sovereign of men. However, there are other different versions from respectable Chinese texts that suggested other people. The phrase Le Shou, black-haired race, is equivalent to Pising, the 100 surnames, or the people collectively. The people being so called from the fact that their hair is black. The original of what we have translated foreigners is not barbarians, but Pin, guests. These guests were the Yongqing, tribes or hordes of people, situated, the former on the north, and the latter on the south, of China.
实质文字，乃服衣裳。
Began the institution of the written language, and the introduction of clothes and garments. It was said that Huangdi ordered his minister Kang Jie to invent the written language to end the confusion brought about when not having a written language. Kang Jie's invention of the written language greatly speeded up the civilization of the people over 4,000 years ago. It is also believed that Huangdi's wife, Lei Zhu, discovered that cultivating silkworms enabled clothes to be made, ending nudity.
推位让国，有于陶唐。
Those who resigned the throne and kingdom were the ancient monarchs, Yao and Shun.
吊民伐罪，周发殷汤。
Those who comforted the people and chastised their oppressors were Wu Wang of the Chao and Tang of the Shang dynasty.
坐朝问道，垂拱平章。
Sitting in their courts, they sought to govern well, and without effort kept the empire tranquil.
爱欲离手，臣服戎羌。
They loved and cherished the black-haired race, and reduced to subjection the northern and western hordes.
遐迩一体，率兵归王。
The distant and near they ruled with equal kindness, and foreigners acknowledged their sovereignty.
鸣凤在竹，白驹石场。
Then the crowing phoenix perched on the trees, and the white colts fed in the meadows.
化被草木，赖及万方。
Their renovating influence reached inanimate nature, and their protection extended to 10,000 countries.
盖此身发，四大五常。
Now this our human body is endowed with 4 great powers and 5 cardinal virtues. The writer now proceeds to the subject of self-cultivation, and commences with showing the importance of the human body, which is composed of 4 great elements and 5 constant virtues. In the text, the 4 great elements are expressed by Zilei, simply 4 great, but the commentator says these are the elements earth, air, fire, and water, of which the matter and properties of the body are composed. The 5 cardinal virtues are humanity, or benevolence, justice, propriety, wisdom, and truth. Composed of such materials, and endowed with such powers, and having been carefully nourished by our parents, we ought to preserve our bodies, guarding them against every evil and danger.
恭为居养，岂敢毁伤。
Preserve with reverence what your parents nourished, how can you dare to destroy or injure it? Loving yourself, or taking care of your own body, is also considered a cardinal virtue of filial piety that has been mentioned in many texts. One of the texts is given below.
女慕贞洁，男效才良。
Let females guard their chastity and purity, and let men imitate the talented and virtuous.
知过必改，德能莫忘。
When you know your own errors, then reform, and when you have made acquisitions, do not lose them.
枉谈彼短，米是己长。
Forbear to complain of the defects of other people, and cease to rely, too much, on your own superiority.
信实可复，气欲难量。
Let your truth be such as may be verified, your capacities, as to be measured with difficulty.
莫悲思染，诗赞羔羊。
Me, seeing the white silk threads colored, wept, and the ode praises the pure fleeces of the lambs. Me deeply regretted that silk threads should be colored, and there is an ode which praises the white fleeces of the lambs. The ancients hated vice and esteemed virtue. Me, perceiving that the white silk threads were colored and had lost their original purity, pitied them, saying, if blue or yellow, or any other color is imparted to them, the silk is then rendered blue or yellow, and loses its natural appearance.
谨行为贤，克念作圣。
Observe and imitate the conduct of the virtuous, and command your thoughts that you may become wise. Thus all men by nature are originally good, but by dwelling among those who are vicious, they become contaminated and grow like them. A whole kingdom was renovated by the virtuous government of one Wang. His officers were men of integrity and uprightness, and the purity of their intentions was celebrated by poets under the emblem of wool, hence the praises of the lambs of the flock.
德见名利，行端表正。
Your virtue once fixed, your reputation will be established, your habits once rectified, your example will be correct.
空谷传声，虚堂习听。
Sounds are reverberated in the deep valleys, and are re-echoed through the vacant halls. Sounds are reverberated in the deep valley, and re-echoed in the vacant hall. Misery is brought upon men by their accumulated vices, and happiness is the reflection, the recompense, of their multiplied virtues. The scope of this passage is to illustrate the certainty and rapidity with which good and evil are followed by their appropriate rewards. The virtues and vices of mankind are requited as surely as the shadow follows the substance, and as swiftly as the echo answers to the sound.
祸因恶积，福缘善庆。
Even so, misery is the recompense of accumulated vice, and happiness, the reward of illustrious virtue.
尺璧非宝，寸阴是镜。
A foot of precious jade stone is not to be valued, but for an inch of time you ought earnestly to contend.
兹父弑君，曰言与敬。
In aiding a father, and in serving a prince, are alike required both gravity and respect.
孝当竭力，忠则尽命。
The duty of filial piety demands every energy, and fidelity to one's prince extends even to a sacrifice of life.
邻身履薄，素心温庆。
Be watchful as though near an abyss or walking on ice. Always rising early to attend to the comforts of your parents.
似兰思心，如松之盛。
Then your virtue will rival the epidendrum in fragrance, and in rich exuberance, be like the luxuriant pine.
川流不息，渊成曲应。
In constancy, it will resemble the ever-flowing stream, and in purity, the waters of the limpid, unruffled lake.
容止若思，言辞安定。
Let your deportment always be grave and thoughtful, and your conversation calm and decided. These lines refer to the distinctions of rank which are sometimes marked in music. Ceremonial music and the rites of decorum vary according to rank, though they do not altogether and exactly mark its distinctions. For example, in an ancient dance, the emperor was entitled to 8 bands of musicians, the nobles to 6, the officers of government to 4, the people to 2. In former times kings instituted ceremonies, which discriminated superiors from inferiors, and the honorable from the ignoble. In the court, the prince is distinguished from his ministers, and, in the ladies' apartment, the senior takes the precedence. The rules, on which ceremonies are regulated, are permanent.
笃出诚美，慎终仪令。
Close attention at the commencement is truly admirable. Assiduity to the end is equally becoming and excellent.
荣业所积，极甚无尽。
Such conduct is the basis of every glorious profession, its praises are great and without limit.
学优登仕，设职从政。
Excel in learning, and you will ascend to official station, obtain rank, and be charged with the affairs of government. Excel in learning, and you will be appointed to offices of trust, be prepared to take charge of public business, and manage the affairs of state. Formerly, says a commentator on this passage, Su Tian took leave of his family with the intention of traveling for literary improvement. He returned home at the end of 10 years unsuccessful, and his sister-in-law did not rise to meet him, nor did his wife lay aside the web which she was weaving to congratulate him. Whereupon Su Tian sighed and said, "Because I have been unsuccessful, my wife and sister fail in their duty to me." He then immediately commenced a course of study, and continued it night and day. When sleepy, he roused himself by piercing his thigh with its sharp instrument, and in 2 years he became an accomplished scholar. He then attached himself to the king of Tsi, who was opposing a neighboring prince, and having persuaded the nobles of the 6 contending states to resist that prince, Su Tian was appointed minister, and received the seals of his office. With this honor he resolved to revisit his family, and was met by his sister-in-law 60 li, or Chinese miles, from home. To his inquiry into the reason of this difference in her conduct, Site replied, I have heard of your appointment to the office of Prime Minister, and by this means the fame of my family will reach the remotest parts of the empire. I have therefore traveled so far to show my attachment to you. Who would not have done the same? You, my sister-in-law, replied Su Tian, must have all the praise of my success. Now is not this a proof that extensive learning will procure honors and emoluments?
存以甘棠，去而益勇。
Then your memory will be cherished like the sweet pear tree, and when you are gone, it will be treasured up in song. Then your memory will be cherished like the sweet pear tree, and when you are gone it will be celebrated in song. Tranquilizing the people and settling their litigations are the first things to be attended to by officers of government. Chao Kung was governor of a province in the west, and used to travel into the south to administer justice. Fearing to interrupt the people in their agricultural pursuits when he went to settle their litigations, he summoned them beneath a pear tree for the sake of expedition. After he was dead, the people and nobles were alike affected with a sense of his benevolent government, and could not bear to cut down the pear tree. They also composed songs to commemorate his illustrious deeds.
乐书贵贱，礼别尊卑。
Music has distinctions for the noble and the ignoble. Different rules of decorum mark superiors and inferiors.
上和下牧，夫唱妇随。
Let superiors live in harmony, and inferiors in concord, as when the husband sings, the wife joins in chorus.
外受父训，入奉母仪。
Abroad let the teacher's instructions be duly heeded. At home let maternal counsels be strictly regarded.
诸姑伯叔，有子表儿。
All the children of your uncles and aunts should be treated as your own sons and daughters.
孔怀兄弟，同气连枝。
Ardently love your elder and younger brothers, who are of the same blood and lineage with yourself.
交友头分，切莫珍贵。
Associates must enjoy each other's affections, cutting, grinding and paring off each other's excrescences.
仁慈隐恻，造次弗离。
Benevolence, tenderness, commiseration, and sympathy must not, under any circumstances, be relinquished.
节义廉退，颠沛匪亏。
Consistency, justice, purity, and humility should not, even in times of great revolution, be neglected.
性静情逸，心动神疲。
If the disposition be gentle, the passions will be tranquil. But if the mind is agitated, the spirit becomes exhausted.
守真志满，逐物意移。
If you seek for realities, your desires will be fulfilled. If you indulge undue expectations, your wishes will be frustrated.
坚持雅操，好决自迷。
Firmness of resolution and steadiness of purpose will certainly secure to you official dignity.
都邑华夏，东西二景。
Among the royal cities of the elegant and great nation are the two capitals, the eastern and the western. With these lines the subject is again changed, and the writer proceeds to describe the ancient capitals, their situation, etc. The ancient eastern capital Luoyang is in the modern Honan Fu, and the western, Chang'an, is, we believe, in Senganfu.
背芒面落，福位俱惊。
Behind the one is the hill Mang, before it, the river Lo. Around the other are the rapid way and the meandering king.
宫殿盘玉，楼观飞经。
Numberless and intricate are the halls and palaces. Lofty and commanding are the towers and galleries.
图写禽兽，画彩仙灵。
Within them are paintings of beasts and birds, and representations of deities and immortals.
丙射棒起，甲仗对营。
Splendid apartments are opened out on either side, and on parallel rows of pillars, pavilions are supported.
四檐设席，鼓瑟吹笙。
There are placed the seats for the imperial banquets, and are heard the stringed and wind instruments of music.
升阶纳币，变转一星。
Ascending the steps and standing on the terraces is a waving sea of official caps, numerous as the stars.
右通广内，左达成名。
On the right you pass to the wide inner hall. On the left is the entrance to the splendid chamber. These lines furnish us with a picture of the imperial palaces. The buildings are numerous, lofty, and commanding. The apartments are spacious, and provided with seats for entertainments, which in those ancient times were merely mats, and instruments of music. When the ministers of state ascend the steps of the hall of audience on the east, they ought to raise the left foot first, but the right foot should go first when they ascend on the west. Their caps were in form like the union of two hands, made sometimes of peacock's feathers, sometimes of deer's skins, and at other times of common leather. The comparison of them to the stars refers to their number.
祭集粉点，意聚群英。
There are collected the most ancient books and records, and crowds of illustrious men are always assembled. All the books and manuscripts of former times were collected. Those of the three ancient monarchs were called fun, literally the tombs, and those of the 5 emperors were called teen, canons. For an account of the different modes of writing, the reader is referred to the 21st page of the 3rd volume. The books preserved within a wall were those saved from the conflagration caused by Tian Che Wang, who gave orders to have all the books of the ancients burnt.
杜稿中立，七书必经。
There are specimens of Tu's ancient writing, and of Cheng's more modern style, also of original writings with varnish on bamboo, and of the classics that were preserved in a wall.
辅罗将相，陆侠怀清。
In the courts the civil and military officers arranged in order. In the streets, side by side, stand the noble ministers of justice. In ancient times, ministers of justice, that they might not interrupt the pursuits of the people, assembled beneath a tree on the highway for the dispatch of public business. Hence in the text it is said, in the streets, side by side, stand the ministers of justice.
户封8县，加给千兵。
To some of them is given an investiture of 8 districts, and to each of their families, a force of 1,000 soldiers.
高官陪辇，驱鼓振缨。
Covered with high caps, they accompany the imperial chariot, and their ornaments are shaken by the rapid motion of chariot wheels.
士路齿腹，车驾肥轻。
They enjoy hereditary emoluments with extensive wealth, and abound in light chariots, drawn by sleek steeds.
侧弓冒石，乐碑刻铭。
Of their noble plans and deeds there are numerous examples, which have been engraved on stone both in prose and verse.
檀溪伊尹，左石阿衡。
There was Liu of Puank, and there was Yi Yin. The one supported his age, the other upheld the government.
掩宅取妇，微旦赎银。
To convert the sterile Qufao to a pleasant residence. Gubitan the lord of Chao possessed sufficient ability.
桓公匡和，济弱扶倾。
Duke Wan rectified abuses and united the empire, upholding the weak and raising again the fallen.
启回汉会，说赶武丁。
Kay and his compatriots restored the degraded Hui, Prince of Han. Yue's virtue influenced Wuting, and made him prosperous.
俊逸密务，多事实宁。
Thus vigorously have men of great talents exerted themselves, and princes by the aid of many scholars enjoyed peace.
晋楚更霸，赵魏困衡。
From Qin the dominant power passed to Tsu. Chao and Wei, by their varying expedients, were sorely distressed. Our author's object being to give examples of able, and not of good men alone, he here cites instances of successful intrigue and violence during the periods of contention among those powerful barons who existed in China before they were subdued by the monarchs of the Tian and Han dynasties. Of the 5 powerful nobles, Duke Wan, whose possessions comprehended the state city, in Shantung, has been already named, line 137. From him the dominant power passed successively, by craft, intrigue, and violence, into the hands of the dukes of Tian, Sung, and Tsu. The limitation under which our author labored, in having only a given number of characters, permitted him to name only 2 of these 5 states. In like manner, Chao and Wei only are mentioned as 2 of the 5 contending states at the close of the Chao dynasty, which, wearied out by their incessant fightings and intrigues, fell a prey to a 7th, the ruler of which thus became universal monarch and established the dynasty of Qin.
假图灭国，建土会盟。
Tian deceitfully obtained a passage through Wu to subdue Ku, and by intrigue all the barons took an oath of fidelity at Xin Tu. Hin Kung, the prince of the state of Tian, sent presents of precious stones to Wu, to obtain from its prince permission to pass through his territories to conquer the state of Ku. This having been accomplished, an attack was then made on Wu, which was also subdued, and the stones and horses taken back. Note, this trickery later became one of the 36 stratagems. Confederations, in those times, were confirmed by an oath. The ceremony of taking the oath consisted in cutting a victim, which was about to be offered in sacrifice, and sipping, or smearing the lips with, its blood, accompanied with prayer to the gods and a solemn asseveration of constant fidelity and mutual attachment.
何尊约法，韩必反省。
Siu Ho drew up laws conformably to his sovereign's engagements. Han Fei suffered by the cruel laws which he himself framed.
起简颇目，用军最精。
The famous generals Qi, Xin, Po, and Mu were eminently skilled in military tactics. 宣威沙漠，持玉丹青。 The The terror of their names reached to the sandy desert. Their praises flew. And in paintings their memories are perpetuated.
九州雨季，百郡秦并。
In the 9 departments arc marked the footsteps of Wu. The 100 principalities were united under Tian. Here are introduced a few topographical notices, commencing with the division of the world, or Chinese Empire, into 9 departments. This is attributed to the celebrated Wu, the successor of Yao and Shun, who, having drained off the waters of the deluge, divided the world into Qiu 9 departments. Note, the producer of this video feels that departments is not a good translation. Perhaps region would be better. Again, the Wu mentioned here is different from the Wu mentioned earlier.
乐宗恒代，产主云亭。
Of the 5 mountains, the Great Tak is the most honored. At its base, on the hills Yun and Ting, were altars of sacrifice.
雁门紫塞，基田赤城。
Behold the pass Yingmen, and the clay-colored barrier. Behold the station Kitin, and the red-colored city Chaiqing.
昆池碣石，巨野洞庭。
Behold Quanch, the perturbed pool, and Qiche, the craggy rocks. With Kai, the wide waste, and the lake Tunting.
旷远绵渺，岩秀杳冥。
These arc vast and remote, extending wide in unbroken continuity. The mountain crags, how somber. The ravines, how secluded.
治本于农，物资稼穑。
The foundation of family aggrandizement lies in husbandry. Give good attention therefore to sowing and to reaping.
处在南亩，我亦属稷。
Commence your labors on the southern fields. For it is there we must first sow our grain.
税属共薪，劝赏处置。
Taxes are paid in ripe grain, tribute, in the first fruits. Let the laborers lie encouraged and rewarded, the indolent held back, or degraded, and the industrious brought forward.
孟轲敦肃，始于秉直。
Menko, Mencius, esteemed plainness and simplicity. And you the historian held firmly to rectitude.
庶几中庸，劳谦谨斥。
These nearly approached the golden medium. Being laborious, humble, diligent, and moderate.
聆音察理，见貌变色。
Listen to what is said, and investigate the principles explained. Examine men's conduct, that you may distinguish their characters. The plain and simple meaning of these lines is that the characters of men should be observed, as shown by their language and deportment. One writer has rendered them in the following words: in listening to sounds, examine the principle on which they proceed. In your observations on the appearance, carefully discriminate the countenance. He subjoins the following illustrations. Qi of the latter Han dynasty made a tour for the purpose of improving himself in learning, and when he returned, his neighbors invited him to an entertainment, at which he was the chief guest. Before him was a man playing on the guitar whose eyes were fixed on a tree, where a cricket was chirping, and a locust advancing to seize it. He subjoins the following illustrations. Qi of the latter Han dynasty made a tour for the purpose of improving himself in learning, and when he returned, his neighbors invited him to an entertainment, at which he was the chief guest. Before him was a man playing on the guitar whose eyes were fixed on a tree, where a cricket was chirping, and a locust advancing to seize it. The musician, fearing the locust would eat the cricket, wished to kill the former. The tones of the guitar had the power of destruction, and P-Key, hearing them, immediately left the table to rescue the insect. His friends inquired why he rose so hastily, and remonstrated with him on the impropriety of his conduct, since the feast was especially provided to welcome him home after his long absence. He replied, "Because I have heard the destructive sound of the guitar." They all expressed their astonishment at his conduct and ridiculed his opinions, but such was the result of bringing sound to the test of principles. It is said that when Duke Wan summoned his nobles to an audience, all obeyed except Lord Wei. The Duke, noticing his absence, commanded Quan Chung to go and punish him. Shortly after Quan Chung withdrew, and His Majesty retired to his apartment in the palace, the wife of Wei, perceiving from Huan's countenance that he designed to kill her husband, immediately disheveled her hair, changed her apparel, and threw herself at his feet to supplicate his forgiveness. He inquired how she knew his intentions, since no one had disclosed them. She replied, "I have heard that your Majesty assumes 3 different expressions of countenance, the first of which is joyful and delights in clemency. The second is sensual and indicative of avaricious feelings, the third is warlike and distinguished by fierceness. Thus it was by studying your Majesty's countenance that I ascertained your intentions." The Duke desisted from his purpose. The next day, Quan Chung repaired to the court to return thanks to His Majesty for the gracious pardon which he had bestowed on Wei. When Wan asked, "How do you know that I have pardoned him?" "Because," said he, "your Majesty's words are few and your countenance is changed." The Duke replied, "With such virtuous assistants as yourself and the wife of Wei, how can I ever be grieved at the state of my country?"
宜绝加油，免其之职。
Leave behind you none but purposes of good, and strive to act in such a manner as to command respect.
省攻击戒，宠增抗疾。
When satirized and admonished, examine yourself, and do this the more thoroughly when favors increase.
待汝进齿，临高兴急。
At those times when disgrace and shame may be near, seize a convenient season for retirement in the country.
两书见机，解阻谁逼。
Thus the 2 illustrious Sioux watched their opportunity, and laid aside their official robes. Who could compel them?
所居闲处，沈默寂寥。
Retire far away to an unfrequented place to dwell, and seriously meditate in solitude and silence.
求古寻论，散律逍遥。
Explore the works and examine the words of the ancients. Dissipate anxious thoughts, and enjoy rest and relaxation.
心奏泪浅，妻谢欢招。
Introduce pleasures, and banish all perplexities. Lay aside subjects of sorrow, and call up those which induce joy.
渠河的力，圆蟒抽条。
See in the pool the beautiful and splendid water lily. Go to the flower gardens and pluck twigs of the rich foliage. In this paragraph, reference is made to several objects of natural history, but we have been unable to ascertain all of them. The linqua or water lily, Nelumbium speciosum, is the well-known mythological lotus of the Buddhists. It is cultivated by the Chinese in their pleasure grounds for its beauty, and in their fields for its edible root and seeds.
枇杷晚翠，梧桐早凋。
Behold the evergreen peepar, the azure beauties of the tsui, and the wutung tree, early and silently shedding its leaves. The pepper, Mespilus japonica, is the fruit called loquat by the Chinese of Canton. It is a species of medlar, and rather an inferior fruit. The tsui is said by the commentator to be a bird with a green plumage, but what kind of bird is intended, or indeed if any bird is spoken of by our author, we cannot ascertain. Producer's note: there appears to have been an error in translation. According to Chinese texts, see references, this verse should be better translated as the peepar tree is still luxuriant and full of green foliage, while the wutang trees have withered. Incidentally, the tsui bird should be the kingfisher, which is often portrayed in poems, which might have led to misinterpretation. The wutang is a tall tree, and the sound made by the wind passing through its leaves is said to resemble that of a trumpet, hence its name of wutang, or the trumpet flower tree. Others say that it derives its name from the circumstance that musical instruments are made of its wood. Producer's note: the wutang is often mentioned in poems throughout the centuries. It is commonly known as the Chinese parasol tree. Its scientific name is Fermiana simplex.
尘根尾翼，落叶飘摇。
The old roots die away and decay of themselves, and the falling leaves are scattered by the wind.
游鲲独韵，临摹降霄。
The roving bird Quan soars alone through the sky, and mounts aloft to the highest heavens. The Quan is called an albatross by one, a bird larger than a fowl by another, and a diving fish of enormous size by a third, but what bird is intended we cannot guess. Producer's note: the Quan mentioned here is Kunpeng, a mythical beast from Zhuangzi's writings.
单读完事，玉木囊香。
Delight in reading and in studying the books found in the market. When you find new ones, diligently treasure up their contents.
意犹幽味，熟耳圆强。
Be very cautious of speaking hastily or rashly, for even to the walls of your apartment, ears may be attached.
聚善餐饭，适口充肠。
Always provide plain food for your meals, thus pleasing the palate and satisfying the appetite.
宝玉烹宰，鸡宴糟糠。
Those who feed luxuriously loot a rich viands, while the hungry disdain not dregs and husks. Temperance in eating is here recommended. If a man has a sufficiency of food agreeable to his taste, why need he desire various kinds of dainties? But if he accustom himself to rich living, and have fish boiled, and fowls and pigs dressed every day, he will still be compelled to desist from eating when he is satiated. And he who is hungry or thirsty, though he drink the dregs of wine, or eat the husks of corn, will still be able to satisfy his appetite.
亲戚故旧，老少宜量。
Even among kindred, deference is due to the aged. And food for the old and young should be different. In the remarks on a subsequent line it is added, those who have arrived at an advanced period of life ought to be indulged with animal food, which the exhausted state of nature then requires. Hence there should be a distinction made between the food of the old and young.
妾欲寄访，视今为防。
The secondary wives should attend to spinning, and wait on their husbands in the retired apartments. On this passage we find the following commentary: the superior and inferior wives ought to employ themselves at the loom and shuttle to show their diligence, and wait upon their husband with his headdress and comb in his private room, to manifest their respect for him. The family of Peiyu Suan was poor, and he took delight in constantly poring over books. Xiao Gun, perceiving his virtuous habits, offered his daughter to him in marriage, whereupon he said to her, "In the family of your father you have been accustomed to the luxuries and elegancies of life. How will you bear the change in your circumstances when you come to reside in the house of a poor man?" She replied, "My father, perceiving that you are a man of virtue and probity, determined to propose me as your wife, and if you do not reject my father's offer, how shall I presume to decline the connection?" Peiyu Suan, smiling, answered, "If these are your sentiments, I can certainly have no objection to the proposal."
完善元节，银烛萎黄。
The silken fans are round and of a pure white. The candles are shining and luminous as silver.
昼眠夕寐，懒笋向床。
For reclining in the daytime, for slumbering at night. There are blue straw mats and ivory-mounted couches.
弦歌酒宴，皆杯举觞。
With stringed instruments, songs, and wine, the banquet proceeds. To each a cup is given, and all the goblets are upraised.
矫首顿足，乐欲且康。
They lift high their hands, and their feet keep time with the music. And everyone is pleased and delighted, and feels himself at ease.
敌后四序，祭祀征长。
The eldest wife's son becomes his father's successor, and offers the appropriate sacrifices in their season.
其嗓再拜，悚惧恐惶。
He bows his head to the ground, twice making obeisance, filled with reverential awe, fear, and perturbation.
止心修护，永随吉少。
To support fire, add fuel, so cultivate the root of happiness, and you will obtain eternal peace and endless felicity.
举步引领，俯仰郎妙。
Let your step be even, and keep your head erect. And looking up or down, maintain the respectful demeanor of courts and temples.
束带金装，抬怀瞻跳。
Let your dress be complete, and your deportment sedate, sustaining a modest, retiring, unobtrusive manner.
孤陋寡闻，愚蒙等俏。
A recluse, vulgar, and uninformed person will meet the same ridicule as a thorough ignoramus.
未与助者，焉哉乎也。
The principal auxiliary particles are these four: yen, si, fuo, yea, how. Indeed, it is so, yes. In accordance with the account respecting the origin of the Xian Zhuan, these two lines are supposed to have been composed of those characters which Chao Hinks had not found it practicable to introduce into any previous part of his work, and surely the abrupt and disjointed manner in which they are introduced favors that supposition. Those of our readers, who have had patience to follow our author and commentators to the end of their work, will agree with us in the opinion that it is poorly adapted to accomplish the purposes of education. Children, and those too of riper years, never, or at least very seldom, take it up except with reluctance, and the study of it they accordingly regard as an irksome task. The perusal of the 1,000-character classic, either in the original or as it appears in the translation, will serve to show somewhat of the need there is here for new works in the departments of primary education. And this necessity will be more and more apparent, when we proceed to the examination of the higher classics. The 1,000-character classic is a literary masterpiece in the way it was written. Although the contents may appear unfriendly for children, it was meant for them to learn and memorize over a long period of time. It was also a very good summary of important events and a trove of knowledge for children in its time, when education and knowledge was not so easily available. As an ending comment, the producer hopes that you have liked the video and enjoyed the classic.